Good morning. I'm Kristen Thompson. Again, I want to thank you all for being here on such a cold morning. And I just want to give you a really brief background of what we've been working on and a little context. So it's been a couple years ago already. Several of us, with Pastor Andrew's leadership and participation of a few folks, gathered to talk about ways that we could be more welcoming as a congregation. And that was really, we did a webinar, we had some conversations, we started to implement some light changes. And then kind of in coordination with that, or at the same time, we started to talk about making some updates to our building for safety, as well as to be more welcoming. We updated our restrooms, we updated a door over on Walnut Street. And we talked about maybe we wanted a new welcome desk or something that would try to make our gathering area make a little more sense for visitors. And as we dove into that deeper, we just started to kind of realize that some of the flow and function of our spaces wasn't really optimal. Things like entering the sanctuary from the front. You know, we all are kind of used to that as members, but if you're brand new to our congregation, it could be a little awkward to walk in to the front when things are happening. And so things like that, you know, we were trying to kind of think of how to address that. And in the midst of that conversation, we had a very generous bequest from the Lauren Albert estate that started to help us realize that we might be able to think a little bigger than just a new desk in maybe a different spot. And so we started to explore what level of changes we might like to see in our gathering area and in our sanctuary. We brought together a couple new members to our refresh group, and we convened groups at the end of last summer. We called them focus groups in the areas of worship, music, children, youth, and families, mission and service, technology, and hospitality. And so we had all of these groups meet a couple of times and talk about ways that the building served us well and ways that we might like to see improvements. And so we gathered all of this information. We had the support of the Lauren Albert estate to work with EA architects, and we've had several meetings through the fall. And this is where we are today, is we're considering if this is a change, or if these changes are changes that suit us, and this is a direction that we want to go forward. We don't yet have building plans. This is a design concept. But basically, we're seeking the endorsement sort of as a straw poll or a thumbs up, wanting to make sure that we're not out of step with our membership and our family, our church family. So without much further ado, I just want to highlight a couple of things. We have these packets that are a summary of the focus groups. They're available in the gathering area. You can feel free to grab one if you would like afterwards. And then we also do have poster boards printed of what you'll see up here on the screen. And so if you feel it's maybe hard to see from where you're seated, just know that you'll have a chance to see it up close afterwards. But feel free to move up if that would be helpful to you. Feel free to grab a little something more to eat. What more? Anything more? I think we'll just welcome Brian from EA, and thank you, Brian, for being so generous with your time in guiding us through this process of what is possible.
Sure, thank you so much.
And don't be shy about the snacks. There's quite a few, so you can always dash, grab, and rejoin.
I'm Catholic, so when you bring out the donuts to start, you know, you're right in my wheelhouse here. When we first started working with the focus groups, I have to say they brought to the kickoff meeting an extremely well-prepared document. We were very impressed with the depth of the thought that they had given all of their areas of expertise and shared with us, and that really got us off to a terrific start on this project. I think what you're going to see today in the floor plans and the renderings we have is that we're doing a lot with very little in terms of budget, but it's also not everything, right? And so we've got a long way to go. This is schematic or concept drawings. We have not done construction drawings. We've done a preliminary estimate, but we have not bid things yet. So if there's things you're not seeing in the project, know that we still have time to incorporate them, right? And we still have time to do more development as we move forward. So I think the primary things that we walked away with from that kickoff meeting was that we wanted to have a more welcoming entrance sequence or a procession in. We wanted some focus as we came through the door, came up the steps. We wanted to be able to understand how you get into the worship space just intuitively and visually, as well as try and create a bigger space for social activity out there. In this space, it was primarily about making sure that we were including families in a better integrated way than what we have on the side. It was about acoustics. We had the pipe organ to talk about, and we had how the seating works to talk about as well. So I think as we go through these images, you'll see how some of that got addressed. This is just your overall floor plan, and with all of the spaces, you can see kind of this light gray space. Those are areas we're not doing any work. The green, the blue, and the yellow are the areas that we're touching and making changes. I'm going to go to the next slide. So then we blew this up a little bit, so hopefully you can see a little bit better. The dark, heavy lines are walls, new walls. So I'm just going to get up here and point at some things. One of the first things we did was we wanted to bring some focus to this wall, which is the wall behind the organ here, between the worship and the gathering space. And so we did that by sliding it back about 6 feet. We have the doors coming into the worship space on that wall now, and we're proposing that we put stained glass back in that wall that is currently downstairs in storage. So in this way, when you come up the stairs, you will have a focal point very similar to that window right there. So immediately, it tells you you're here, you're in the worship space, you're coming to worship, maybe gets the mindset right for that, and then also opens itself up. So there's no more sort of like, do I go to the side, do I go around, that kind of thing. The next thing we looked at was the orientation of the worship space. We had a number of schemes to do this. We really had one where it's turned 90, one where it goes 180. The 90-degree turn was the one that solved most of our issues for us in a really generous, beautiful way. So we're closing off a couple of these areas because we're now entering into the worship space here. It puts the chancel up front or on this wall. It puts the seats at an angle, so it's more of a community-facing space. And it keeps the family area here, but centered on the chancel. It also allows family members to kind of go in and out of what is really now the back of the church. Choir happens in this loft, which is this one right here. We're going to open it up more than it is. We have some acoustic issues to take care of in doing that. We'll be working with an acoustic consultant to do that. We'll be shaping that room for acoustics as well as this space. And of course, the last piece of all of this is the audio and visual. So we're doing screens that you'll see in the front of the renderings, and it keeps our audio booth actually right where it is now in the back, which is, yep, everyone wave to the audio guys. Thank you. They appreciate that. And we appreciate it that it's in the same location, which is just a really good budget decision, right? We don't have to rewire everything. It's in a good spot. We've also created a coat room, which is a full room off to the side right there, We've dedicated a spot for a chairlift so that we could potentially have a chairlift that goes up to the choir loft for full accessibility to that. And if I back up to the gathering space, really moving this down allows us to create a much more generous space out here. We can do a furniture placement in there now where it becomes more lounge and comfortable casual meeting space. And then over in this space that you currently have benches, we would be proposing some high top tables and some low tables with chairs so we can accommodate different forms of seating, right? Maybe I want to go to the rendering. So this is what it starts to look like, as if you were over by those high top tables and chairs. Looking back, here's the stairs and the planters that come as you come in, as you come into the door, through the door. Here is the art glass that we're proposing. We bring up from storage, put in that wall. It'll match that art glass, so we'll have it on both sides of the church as it once was. These are the new doors that go into the worship space. They would be located on that end of this wall and on this location here. And then you can see we've added kind of another buffet coffee bar situation flanking the existing one out in the gathering space as well. You also can see just the opening to the coat closet. So as guests come in, maybe who have not been here before, I think they have all the wayfinding clues that they didn't have before, right? They come in, they look up the steps, they see the art glass, they can see through the doors, they know where the worship space is. There's no door to the coat room to the side. They can see that. They know where to go with it. The coffee and more donuts. Love. That's there, so we see those. And so they just intuitively understand where they need to go, where things are, right? And then as we look, this is a perspective from inside this space. It's as if you're sitting in the back corner where the audio is right now. Okay, so this door, if I just go through, is that door over there. We've made it a single. You can see the chancel across the front. We now have a ramp for accessibility up to the chancel. So there'd be no steps in that location for folks. You can see the choir loft. As I mentioned, we're shaping that for better acoustics. We're taking some of the wall down lower to open it up more. We have risers for the choir in that. The bell choir is also there. Their tables and bells will be off to the side that they can just bring forward. And we're expanding it to accommodate that. And then you can see the door that would be going back out to the gathering space and the new set of art glass windows. We're reusing most of the pews in the existing church, and then we have some additional chairs off to the side, not unlike what you have now over in the family area. Yes? We have more seats. Maybe you can go back.
Am I on?
We would have slightly less capacity in the space for seats, but because we're keeping most of the pews, but we might add a couple of chairs.
Yes.
But total capacity of seating here would be slightly less.
I believe the total on a regular ongoing basis would be 148 with the ability to add seating in the back if we had a memorial service or special event that required that.
Mm-hmm.
Would the bell choir and the choir be able to both sit up there as well if they had a joint service where they would have both of them participating?
There would not be seats for both of them up there, but they could both be up there performing. So the tables, bell choir standing, and then regular choir on the risers at that point.
Can you perhaps visually show us approximately how much lower that wall is going to be?
I can. I think your floor in there is about this high right now. White tape is the floor, I'm told. So I was close. We're going to bring it down to about here to open it up. We do have to have a guardrail, of course, right, for safety that will come up, but that'll be an open guardrail, balusters and the like. We keep a little bit of wall here so that you're not sitting and looking at people's feet. And then we open it up for more acoustics from that point, better acoustics.
This open railing, if you will, here, will pick up the same design that is alongside our planters in the gathering area. So you'll carry through that theme.
So how much further down then are we talking the opening would be?
Good question. So we have that up. Okay. So there's another structural column just like this over there, right? So we'll open it up to that point, and then we're going to fill this one in, and that allows us to flank the opening with 2 large screens. Okay? So a little bit of this is actually filled in. It's that rectangle right there that's filled in.
Interestingly, we learned from the AV experts that there may be projection rather than screens. We were under the impression that with the price of screens having dropped as much, you've all been to a Sam's Club or you can get 80-inch screens for $1,200, whatever that is. But for a commercial style quality screen,
Well, the cost of projection is about half of what new screens would be. So about $12,000 per screen versus $6,000 for a projector. The other benefit to not having TV screens in here is that with a TV screen, we'll get a lot of glare off of the windows and of the lighting. So they really suggest that we do a projection on the wall, and then when it's not projecting anything, it's just wall. It's not like a blank TV on the sidewall. So if you can imagine where the TV screens are there, the audio architects actually suggest that those screens be put about 3 feet higher than what they're showing there. So the projection would be higher because people standing in here, you don't have to look at the back of somebody's head to read something. It would just be above the person in front of you. So.
It's about to where the banner is. Yeah. So the opening ends up, as you can tell from the rendering, being kind of centered on the chancel, right? Everything is a little bit right justified in the plan because we're bringing this wall in. But the opening will be centered on the chancel.
Are we still going to have both piano and organ? And where would they be located?
So right now, the piano is on the right side of the chancel. Let me come up here, yep. He's got the pointer there. And then we have a keyboard on the left side. The organ is not going to be restored at this point because of costs.
I have a question about the gathering area. I know when we get a bunch of people out there, it is deafening. You can hardly hear what you're saying. Is there any acoustic plan to improve that, or in the case of budget constraints, can it be planned for future?
Right now, we're looking at acoustic treatments that will be up in the coffers above those light fixtures. If you can see the mouse pointer there moving around, right? And obviously, we'll be recarpeting the space as well. a lot of the things with acoustics, we work with a lot of acoustic consultants on projects. They do a terrific job modeling things, but keep in mind when we talk about acoustical panels and treatments like that, we can phase those kinds of things in, right? So we can do some panels now, we can live in the space, see how it adjusts to us being in there with those panels, and then we can add more down the road if we feel like we need some. That's a very common practice in all of our religious projects. Even when the modeling shows we need more, sometimes budget doesn't allow it. So we start out a little smaller, and then we move into more as it becomes affordable to do so. Sometimes we don't always move into the full thing, because the folks like you that get in there and use the space go, this is really good. I'm very happy with this. I don't want to go any further, right? And so that happens, which is a good thing.
Huge, maybe you can elaborate on the organ conversation, just to help people understand why that's part of the plan.
So whether you know or you don't know, our organ was purchased in 1978 to replace an old organ that was from the 1930s. And so that 1930s organ lasted for about 50 years. And so now 1978, we're approaching 50 years again. The problem with this organ is that it's a Zimmer organ that it's a hodgepodge of different kinds of parts from like 5 different places: Canada, Germany, England, New York, and another place, Maryland or something like that. New Jersey, I think it is. And so when we've had the people work on this organ, they are really surprised that we don't have more problems with it. And we keep putting, once in a while we keep putting Band-Aids on it, but if you go behind this organ, you will see just a mountain of wires that all need to come apart in order to take this thing down and reinstall it. We're being told that it'll be between $200,000 and $300,000 to take the organ down, store it, and reassemble it. And the problem with that is that the wiring system is very fragile. Putting that same system in will cause problems down the road. What they would suggest, the organ people, would be to put a new electronic system in. I don't know if many of you are familiar with hard drives on computers. You know, back in the day when we had a hard drive, you had a little spinning disk inside of your computer, and so that mechanically could go wrong. Nowadays, we have solid state hard drives where there's no moving parts in that, and that's the type of system they would go to in rewiring this organ. So just for the cost of it, you know, plus we also spend, you know, $600 to $1,000 a year to tune this organ. We would not have that cost with an electronic organ. The flip side of an electronic organ is, yes, it's an electronic organ. It doesn't have that tonal quality that, that this organ would have, but we would have speakers with that. And the other side of that is that an electronic organ in 5, 10, 15 years may be obsolete, and we may have to replace it a little sooner than 50 years. As like a traditional pipe organ. Any questions on the organ itself? Yep.
One of the things we heard in the last round of this was the fact that even if we can't continue to use this organ, and we love the look of the pipes and we love seeing an organ of this quality or appearance in this space, we could still use the parts artistically. So if we wanted to basically kind of create a panel look of that so we didn't lose that feel and look of them, we could find a place in the space to reutilize them on an artistic level.
Yeah, and some people asked about the resale value of this organ. So what the organ people told me is that, number one, this organ is sized for this space. So taking this organ and putting it into another church that's smaller or bigger is not going to be fruitful for them. The other thing is that as churches, more and more of them are closing or getting rid of their organs, there is a lot of them out there. This one would only be probably good for some obsolete parts for other organ people. So there isn't a whole lot of value in this organ, and the whole thing can be taken apart. It's all screwed together, so it can all be taken apart, and parts of it could be reused, like Laura said.
regarding the acoustics, following up on Darlene's question, am I right that we'd expect that even initially there would be improvements in the sound in the gathering area, even with kind of the phase one?
Yes. Yeah, we've budgeted to have acoustic treatments in those coffers in phase one of the project.
Can you ask again for the people online?
Would it help to try to get our gatherings and the people talking in a noise under the lower ceiling instead of under the open space, where I think that's where a lot of people are right now, and the noise just really has a chance to really bounce?
Really bouncing the, I guess it'd be hard to say if that's the case. Depends on how noisy we are as eaters. But I would say that, you know, phasing the acoustics is going to be to your advantage, right? Being able to start with something. It's a big box, and that's part of the issue, right? So everything is just bouncing, right? Even having the door openings in that wall is going to help when those doors are open, right? Having more people in there, we absorb sound, that's going to help, right? So the plants that are in there, that all helps. So it's kind of all those little bits and pieces that are contributions. You know, we've used your logo here as an accent on this wall. It's a placeholder. We're not really sure what it's going to be yet, but maybe we do that out of acoustic material, right? And so every little bit that we can soften the space helps. I drove down here from my cabin. You can't let me off that easy. There's got to be more. Good question. So next steps. Oh, he asked what the time frame for construction is. So next steps, as we mentioned, this is schematic design. So we have to take the next step into construction documentation, where we actually draw the construction details of this. We do the code review. We get drawings submitted to the state for review and approval. And while that's happening, we have the contractors bidding the project, right? So that's about a 3 to 4 month process, depending on the approvals we need to get. Construction for a project like this, anywhere from 4 to 6 months, but it really depends on the contractor and how busy them and their subs are, right? So it could go faster than that, but I think that's a good kind of safe window to look at. It's as fast as you all can go with us is the right answer. By Christmas next year. You know, I had a religious project in Hudson where someone said we need to be in by Christmas, and no one knows who said it, but a lot of people got blamed for it because it sped things up.
Well, I have two little suggestions that came out of the other night when there was a presentation and one major one, but I'll start with two little ones.
Sure.
Which is in the fellowship area. Right now, the treats for fellowship time would be on that counter in front of the person wearing the blue top. And an important part of our fellowship time is that the person who brought the treats, or the two people who brought the treats, are behind that counter, and you get to talk to them as you come by. And I know we'd give that up. Could that unit be something that can roll out? Even, and keep its cupboards in there, because we do also need that cupboard space. But if that could roll out, then we retain that face-to-face sort of conversation as people are going through.
Sure.
The other thing that was suggested, the other night you mentioned that changing the steps and regaining some of that space is just too expensive for our budget. But folks are wondering if the planter that's closest toward us in that picture, so the one that's farthest east out there, I don't know what's under that, but if that space could either be a counter or high top tables, then there's another place for people to be putting stuff if they're standing, talking to each other. So those are the two small things. The big thing is that there are still some major concerns about the choir space and how that's accessed and how the choir can be part of the congregation. We noticed the other night that as this is, there's not a great way to do a processional. So like Palm Sunday or Easter. You had mentioned that at one time, y'all, my daughter-in-law's from Houston, so I've learned to use that word, had considered putting what you referred to as a music plaza down in this lower corner of that blue space. And I'm not quite sure what that would look like, or how much space it would take. I do think it would help make the space much more flexible for the future. There may very well come a time that we survive and grow enough that somebody wants to do praise music in a service, and that would be a place to do praise music. Also, it just lets the choir be more part of the congregation. So I don't know what that would look like, and I don't know if you have anything to say about that. Someone has said the white rectangle in the green space is an empty chimney. The one that has the big X on it. And that could come out of there so that the back row of the choir would not be separated from each other if we are still up in the choir loft. And the other concern about sound would be that those steps are not carpeted. The steps up to the chancel are not carpeted. But those are kind of tweaks, I think. The big one is just the concern about where the choir is and how the choir can access that. So.
Hello, okay. This is where it gets tricky, maybe, because choir members and other music-involved people, we aren't all on the same page about it. So we'll have to decide how to come to terms with that, lest you think, that it's a stampede. But I love having a dedicated choir space and not the parade back and forth. So maybe we need to talk among ourselves or talk more with you. And we all know not everybody's going to get what they want, but I was thrilled to see a dedicated loft personally.
Sure. So maybe just a couple of thoughts. I know we have more questions over here too. This is a difficult space. We did learn since we executed this drawing that this chimney is not being used. And so we do have the potential to remove that piece. That's all right. You're doing great. We have job openings. This is something we did learn is not being utilized with any of the current HVAC systems, so that gives us the potential to remove it. We know that removing it would be a big thing for the choir. They need to hear each other. And so having that kind of obstacle in that space is less than ideal. So there's a lot of parts in this that probably need more development, right? And that really happens in our design development stage that we would be going to next. The idea of a music plaza that I mentioned last time in our smaller group presentation certainly exists, right? We just know that if we do that in this plan, and what she was talking about is an area in this corner, or that corner of the building, where you basically create an area that's dedicated for the instruments, for the choir, for music, and then we wouldn't necessarily be occupying this, although maybe the bell choir still stays, and it opens all kinds of other opportunities for us. I think the byproduct of that is that we probably have fewer seats and probably a smaller chancel, right? So the answer very clearly, as it was the other night, is this is a possibility, and we should be talking more about it as we move forward. But at this stage, this is kind of the big idea, so.
Working backwards through quick points that I want to go back to and be sure that I understand. In the choir loft, you're talking about putting up risers. Are you talking about the portable risers, the Wenger knockdowns?
Correct.
Okay, where do those store?
Pardon me?
Where do they store?
Where do they store?
Where do they store?
Well, I think they're there pretty permanently at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, when they're in there, yeah.
So they're not configurable?
Yeah. They are not configurable.
Yeah, you can't add,
Correct.
subtract, you can't stack them.
Right.
It functions as a permanent floor.
Correct.
Okay.
Other than they're a furniture piece, not built into the building.
Okay, so they're not included in the bid, they're just presumed.
That's correct.
Okay. Does this chairlift, is there space for this chairlift? Get one large enough to accommodate moving those up and down to a different level?
That's correct.
There's space for that?
Yes.
Because as soon as you have something portable, somebody's going to want to move it.
The chairlifts are pretty permanent.
No, but the risers are not.
Yeah, the risers are not. But we have that all configured right here for that chairlift.
Yeah.
Right? And so the risers are here, they're centered, they're not attached to that wall in any capacity.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all accommodated to its own space.
Okay, second question.
Yeah.
And going back to referring to the organ, you said that there was no consideration for it at this point.
Correct.
But if I understand the way the space is being used, or ever, there's never going to be, there's no space to install a different organ, there's no space, we are permanently then attached to an electronic keyboard.
Organ, that's correct.
Okay.
In terms of the planning, right now.
No, as it's, all of this stipulates as we are presented with it right now.
Yeah.
You are, the third point, you are, what I think you're saying vis-a-vis the gathering area is that the proposed changes, you are relying on the proposed changes to essentially solve the acoustics problem.
Mm-hmm.
That, and you haven't gone any farther to model that, or to, we're just basically going to build it and see if it works?
We use an acoustical consultant that we have a model done, we give them the model, they look at it, they make recommendations for how much and where some of those panels go. But what we have budgeted at this point is putting acoustical material in those coffers.
Yeah.
But we have not done the modeling yet.
Okay, so you're basically just assuming that that's going to cover that issue?
It's going to be absolutely part of it, yes.
Okay, thanks.
They may recommend more, right?
Right.
When the final engineering is completed.
But as it's currently constituted, it is particularly for those of us with compromised hearing, it's a really hard space to actually be in. It doesn't fully function for what we want it because nobody can hear what anybody else has to say. For those of us that are elderly.
Understood, yes.
Okay, so as proposed, basically it's a build it and guess. No?
No, it's a starting point.
Uh-huh.
Anytime we build a preliminary budget for a project like this, we have to make some assumptions about what's going to be required.
Right.
Some things we can know pretty close to the, right on number. We know how much carpeting costs a square foot, right? We can see how much carpeting we will need and we can get very close. The acoustic part of it, until we actually get the engineering done, we don't know exactly what the recommendation is. So what we've taken is just professional experience, working with the acoustic consultant and say, Well, I think we're gonna end up needing at least, or about this much, and then we can build that into the budget.
Okay.
So the budget is an assumption at this point until we have the engineering.
One other quick question, the projection, I assume you mean, you're presuming front projection, right?
Yes, correct, front
Okay,
projection,
thanks.
right? Yeah, yeah. The church is working with their own audio-visual consultant, so we're not really a big part of that, and so that's why I learned we're doing projection tonight, this morning.
Can you go back to the gathering space visual? Why is the ceiling lowered there above the coffee area? And the other point is, when you come up the stairs and see those wooden doors closed, to me that doesn't open it up or look appealing. And so I'm wondering how you're addressing that. When somebody comes in and they're new, they'll see those closed doors because maybe the service has already started. But shouldn't we have a little window in there or something that they can see that that's a sanctuary and that, you know, the windows are going to show through from the north side? And I know it can be a distraction if you're in the service and there's people walking by or looking in, but it might be helpful when there's people that might come in later, maybe during a funeral or whatever. So those are my two questions.
Great question about the doors, and there's a fairly straightforward answer. One option for these doors would be, they would be glass, but to help counteract the potential distraction, those glass, there's a film that you can apply over the door. So you're letting in light, and you know that that's a door, but if you're not going to be, if you're here in church, you're not going to be distracted by they're not here now, the 2.5-year-old tearing up the gathering area because it'll be behind, fuzzed behind film. That is definitely one of the options we're taking a hard look at, is a modification to these two sets of double doors. What about the ceiling?
It's
That is the-
currently there, right? Yeah.
That is, there's no, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Can we go back to the sanctuary picture, please? There we go. Thank you. So I think the choir loft idea might have come from me, and I'm sorry for that. Because I was envisioning kind of more that traditional choir loft in the back of a like Episcopalian church, or it's got the fancy things. So is it cost prohibitive to bring the whole thing down a little bit so that it's actually a performance platform and not a loft? Is one question. And then as you run the algorithms for the sound, I've been playing up there with the bell choir, and I was a semi-professional musician, and you cannot hear up there. And it causes a lot of problems for the performance. And then if the piano is far away, we again have even more of a connection. And I've seen the sound algorithms run in land use situations, like for solar companies. This is just an example that in the winter, sound travels differently than it does in the summer. So I'm just kind of asking you guys to consider that as you run the algorithms, these are not professional musicians. We are not professional musicians. We need a more cohesive listening situation than the algorithm might, if you just plug in musicians, might suggest. But the biggest thing that I've been struggling with is I think if you somehow brought it down, made it a platform, it would be more welcoming to the choir also, or inclusive. Because also you can't see anything up there. I don't know if you guys have watched the bell choir. We're always going up, see, who's got a concern? You know, so like somehow including that.
Imagine that.
I know it's gonna be,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, it's cost prohibitive to lower it anymore. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the question regarding making this a lower level, we have mechanical space here underneath, and so we need to keep that room. This would be as low as it could go. Yeah. So this is as low as it can go. We have to be a little bit careful about how many modifications we make to the building before we start to kick in some other building code things that we don't want kicked in. So that's one part of it. We also have to have the structural engineer look at the ceiling and our joists and truss situation there, because we will want to open the space up as much as possible and shape it with walls so that things project, right? So that surfaces are, generally speaking, hard surfaces, right? So you get some reflectivity to yourself. And that's also kind of that structural consultant engineer work that has yet to happen in the analysis of the building, so. Yes, we've had a lot of discussions about the piano and where that is located and line of sight to the choir and to the choir director. And so that is going to get more attention. Yeah.
I want to make just a comment about the process. What we're mostly trying to get people to tell us at this point in time is the big picture things of we're thinking about doing makes sense. At this point, to take it to the next step, and that next step is going to be going back through almost all of this to say, okay, we threw some furniture into the gathering space. What does that really need to look like, and so forth? So again, they put those in for example purposes, but there has not been a decision or final decision about that at this point in time. And so if you look at almost all the things that some of the people are talking about, the music side is going to have to take serious consideration, and it's not just going to be a acoustics person deciding and putting it in here. We'll have to regather representatives from the music side and work through some very detailed decisions about what that's going to look like at this point. And so there's going to be a real significant process to get down for them to be able to do construction drawings, because everything's going to have to be very specific at that point in time. So we're going to have to be a bit patient with the process and not assume that this is, those are the light fixtures we're going to have, or those are going to have even the double doors going in and out. I think that's still an open conversation that we'll have in the process.
That's a good time to remind us of some six sort of principles for this entire process, and these have been in place either implicitly or otherwise since we started this process. So I'm going to read these for you, and if you've picked up one of these packets, they're right there on the front page. Number one, this process may result in creating a transformational space and be a door into our future. It is also, number two, it is also possible that this process will not result in a design concept that we choose to implement. Number three, none of us will get everything we want. Number four, we need to keep the focus on keeping our congregation together as we take this journey. And finally, this process will require significant time and energy from our key leaders and doers. We need to maintain a spirit of grace with one another.
Has anybody mentioned the budget for this? Because I think it's very impressive that this work could be done for what the budget is.
So the question is what is the budget for this? What we have told EA Architects was that we are working with $350,000, not including upgrades to AV, audiovisual. So we are chasing that down right now, getting an estimate on what our proposed AV expense would be for that. The other question mark that's out there is the condition of the existing stained glass windows. Now, if you look in the back of the sanctuary, which is now our back of our sanctuary, we have 4 large panels in storage and 2 of the 4 at the top in storage. Part of that, part of what's not included in that $350,000 is any stained glass. So whether there needs to be any restoration done to the existing windows or replacing the 2 panels that are missing. When I say missing, they are actually placed somewhere else in our building. So we could take those 2 panels and put them in this space if they need to be refurbished, that sort of thing. But then we would need to replace those 2 windows as well that go to the outside. So there's some things that need to happen with all that. And out of that $350,000 cost estimate, you kind of estimate that about $40,000 of that would be soft costs, which I consider non-tangible assets. Those aren't, it's no drywall, it's no lighting fixtures, it's everything that goes into the architects and the permits and things like that. Am I missing anything?
No.
Non-construct, or non-tangible items?
Yeah, any consultants.
Consultants.
Review fees.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm looking at the fact that there's 2 steps up to the chancel area, if that's any way, I guess, required. Because if it was only 1, then you wouldn't need a 16-foot ramp. You'd only need an 8-foot ramp for ADA. So it could reduce or change that ramp environment. I guess I'm questioning if we need 2 steps versus 1, and it might make things easier to work with.
Two steps is, of course, exactly what you have, right? 2 steps is good for line of sight, where 1 step, at least from the very back of the worship space, might be a little difficult for line of sight, so. Sure, right, yep. Yep.
Those of us who are short, putting the nice tall gentleman from the choir in front of me. Nice tall gentleman from the choir in front of me. I need at least 2 steps to be able to see the top of Andrew's head.
Now we're getting really custom. This is great. Any other questions?
Of the choir loft, in the front row of the choir, there's a little row of marks. Is that where you could put more chairs, or is that?
Yeah, it's probably a little hard to see. You'll see it on the boards out in the gathering space, but that's another row of chairs for possible expansion of the choir or
It
chairs for
just
the
seems
bell choir.
like it would reduce the space given to the bell choir and limit their options. That's all.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm coming, Al. I see Al in the back.
Just know that we've been thinking and talking quite a bit about the choir space. And one of the tweaks that I think would be absolutely necessary is that when you're talking about the risers, et cetera, and the positioning, the spatial positioning, there is no performing group, orchestras, concert bands that perform in a straight row. So in order, there would have to be room enough to have some sort of a slightly arched seating position for the choir so that A, everyone sees the conductor, B, everyone can hear each other. So it's those sort of tweaky things that we need to pursue as we go. Losing that chimney space, I think, would help a lot in being able to have a more flexible area. The other thing that I've been thinking a lot of is what if the chancel area itself was not carpeted, but a harder reflecting surface, wood floor, commercial tile, so that it could serve as a stage for other performing groups, plays, etc. Whenever you add carpet, it seems to me you really build yourself in an acoustic problem. And so I would hope that we could also discuss, having a chancel as flexible a space as possible for enlarged groups when we have the brass, that sort of thing, or outside groups using it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, everyone, for...
I had two questions. How did we come up with this budget? I should know this, but, and then the second thing is, I can't believe that the church is ever gonna have a donation like this. Do we need to maybe think a little bit farther out of the box and, make this the best we can possibly make it with what we have? I know we haven't addressed the building issues either, right, with this, so there's also some budget there, but I can't imagine in my lifetime we'd ever have another donation like this. Maybe we want a plan B and can think of, make it the absolute best we can. I don't know. Wait, you need to talk to her. She can't be the one holding back the strings. I mean, I know there's a process and all that, but I'm just saying, that is unbelievable, the donation we got. Maybe this is the time that we really, truly use it. I don't know.
I think somebody from the bequest team, who would like to speak to that, just to kind of talk just about it so we know, the rest of us.
I can a little, and the original thinking when it was just kind of a gleam in the eye was that it might be a larger amount. And I think that was the first indication to the architects. And so there is thinking, and we won't know for years if we recommended for approval the right balance, the wrong balance, but these are the right questions to have. So right now, it's thinking about how can we make an impactful change with a reasonable sum of money, maybe too reasonable, and have money for other things, programmatic things, spiff up kind of improvements like Nicole's been working on, and perhaps options. We need to balance. Our thinking is making a space that appeals to newcomers, better serves new members, younger members, attracts people in, and holding enough back to have options in the future. So a kind of a balance between the future and present and safety and excitement, but nobody knows what that right balance is. And one of the ways, had we had a larger budget, I'm trying to look at Wade here, but thanks, was seating. This has the same pews in it. If we'd had more money, maybe we would have changed the seating. For me, that's something that can change in the future. So I don't know. Truly, we should talk more about it. If we are open to talking, but I think it's masterful, like you said, Becky, how much is accomplished for a reasonable sum of money, and maybe that's where I end up. And using the same seating, that's something that can change in the future. But I was telling a couple friends recently that I got a Pottery Barn catalog the other day, and most of the furniture in there looked a lot like this wood in the pews. Go figure.
I think, though, we need to think that in the future, everything is going to cost more. I think that you need to look at what, don't cut too many corners, don't put too much off to the future, because prices will continue to go up. And you can get more for your money now than you're going to in 5 to 10 years down the road. Old lady speaking.
That's wise advice. Construction costs never really go down. We know this, right? I think in the planning process for this, both right from the start in the kickoff meeting all the way through to today, we are always thinking about what can we do now to set ourselves up for additional work in the future, right? So the chairs is pew chairs are the perfect example. We have a scheme. We had this scheme drawn with brand new chairs, and they're in a radius form, right? So you have a sort of sense of community in them, right? But we also know that we have a budget to work from. But I know that that can come later, much like some of the acoustic things as well, right? We know some of those things can come later. The question is, are we putting the church, the building itself, in the best possible position for some of those things to come on board? We get the framework kind of right. We get the orientation right. We get the entry sequence right. And we can add furniture, we can take furniture out. Those are the kinds of things that we don't make the focus, right? We get the thing organized in a way where the wayfinding is correct, right? Where it's easy to move through, that it has all the visual clues. And I think this is getting there, right? It's not 100%, but we're on a really good path here. The music area is the area that needs the most work, and we knew that kind of coming into it, but this is going the right direction for the budget that we have today.
I just want to make,
We are at the point where we can take a couple very brief final remarks, and then we're going to move into wrapping things up.
I guess when I look at this, I'm like very grateful that the bequest team is willing to put this much of the bequest towards this project, knowing that they have a lot of things that they're hoping to accomplish with it. And when we look at beyond, we're like, wow, we might want to do some chairs and stuff, some pews. We might want to do a little bit of this, that. These are the types of things as a church that we've always managed to do and make improvements without the large gift that we've been given. And we'll do it through other avenues. Like I work with, everyone knows, the Memorials Committee. It is an easy type of thing there to say, hey, enough people want to go towards, let's put together a pew fund, channel it through there, and build it up until we can do that. You know, this is not, I guess, a one and done type thing. We can always work from here.
One last remark, and it's partly as a bequest committee member and as finance chair. This ultimately, if we keep proceeding to next steps, would require a congregational vote and a supermajority. So I would say, I know that there are people who will vote no on anything, but people of good faith and good hearts who want to preserve all the money from safety's sake. To me, that means, and I will respect that, and you will all respect each other in line with those principles you said, but the higher the price tag, the more no votes we will get. I'm sure of that.
So I do want to wrap this up. A lot of great energy here today, and understand we're dealing with a concept plan. So you're seeing broadest strokes. And so what I'd like to do a bit of just kind of get something of a straw poll. We did this when the architect met with the focus groups a week and a half ago. And so it's not a formal vote, but it is going to give us a sense, the Refresh team and others, the Bequest team, that are shepherding this project forward. If we can get a sense of the room. And if you're watching us online, you could drop your comment in the comment field. So what we're looking for is a thumbs up if you're like, let's move forward, or you have the option to a step down if you think, no, this is not the way that Spirit of Grace ought to go next. Again, to clarify, and thank you that you brought this up, which is that we are well ahead of a formal vote. That requires a church conference with proper notification and a paper ballot and all of that. We're not there. Where we are about to head next is, do we move forward? So if this is a project that you can begin to wrap your head and your heart around, can you give me a thumbs up? And if it's not, give me a thumbs down. Thank you. It was a mostly everywhere a thumbs up. Thank you all. Hughes, do you want to, any closing remarks? He's shaking, he wants more, he wants another donut. Mary?
I just think it's important to thank all the people that have worked so hard already on this project. So, thank you.
And thank you. Also, an enormous note of gratitude to this amazing gift, this bequest that we received from the Lauren Albert Fund, which made all of this possible. Thank you, friends. There's probably a few snacks left over there. Did you have anything else to add, Kristen?
Just thanks everyone for your thoughtful remarks, and we'll be available in the gathering area if you wanted to say a few more things one-on-one.
Has Stump left? Yes. Huge, he had mentioned perhaps some help setting up the fellowship hall for Tuesday's funeral. Anyone? No, never mind.
Actually, I believe we were going to try to move furniture ahead of the carpet install. Are we still going to try to do that today or no? Okay.
Never mind.
I don't think so.
Stay home. Stay warm going home. Stay safe.